Hello everyone, and welcome to the first edition of RailFreight Live, a weekly broadcast in which we discuss the latest news about the rail freight industry.
In our studio in Rotterdam, we will bring you the topic of Uzbekistan, Serbia, and UK. We will also connect you with an expert in the Netherlands and later with a company in China.
But before we turn to our guests, let us have a look at the news of this week. A new multimodal service from China to Uzbekistan via Kyrgyzstan. This has been in the pipeline for quite a long time, and it's a great deal to China. Jailu, maybe you can explain to us why this is so important to China.
This is a multimodal service that train and road has been combined. So from Lanzhou in China until the Kash in China, this part is done by rail. And from Kash in China until the Uzbekistan, this is partially by road and partially by rail. And in the past, this connection has already been existed. But with these new multimodal services, the transit time will be shortened by 5 days, which ends up into 7 to 10 days. At this moment, the train has been transporting the electronic appliance from China to Uzbekistan. And later on the way back, it will bring the cotton yarns.
Okay, so a new service to Central Asia. Is this also important for Europe?
This is potentially important for Europe because, as you can notice, there is no existing railway connections between China and Uzbekistan. This is partially because of a different gauge. And so China has been urging Uzbekistan and Kyrgyzstan to give the permission of constructing a narrow gauge which can connect directly with China, but got refused by Kyrgyzstan, saying that this is not interesting for them, just using the territory, bringing no benefits. So we hopefully that in the future this connection would be accomplished. So from China towards Turkey and Iran, there will be shorter distance, and via Turkey towards the southeast of Europe, the whole transport will be shortened by around 900 kilometers, so equally to 7 or 8 days of transit time.
Okay, sounds interesting.
Speaking of the construction, that we also saw the excavation job of a Choten North Sea Tunnel along the Belgrade and the Budapest line has been completed. Can you share some insight with us?
Yeah, so this is a very interesting project. They have actually bored out the second tunnel of that tunnel, which consists of 2 parallel tunnels, each 2.2 kilometers long. The first was already bored out in April. And this is quite an important project for Hungary, Serbia, but also other countries involved. And it's going to be completed in 2023.
But Marjorie, how will this connection expand the transport capacity in this region?
Well, it's going to be a high-speed railway line. So trains will be able to pass with 200 kilometers per hour. That's quite fast. And it's not only for passenger traffic, so it's also for freight traffic. And why it's so important for the countries involved? We have Hungary, which is a landlocked country, and it has access to the ports through this route, because from Serbia there is an extension to the ports of, for example, Piraeus, a very important port on the New Silk Road, but also for Serbia because it's connecting to Hungary, and Hungary is connecting to Poland and onwards to Asia. So for all countries involved, this is an extension to the New Silk Road. We also had a lot of important news from the UK this week, and we have our UK correspondent, Simon Walton, with us. Simon, could you maybe tell us a little bit more about the quarantine of people who enter into the UK that was recently announced? Is this going to impact the rail freight industry?
Thank you, Studio. Yes, there's a difference between quarantine, that's goods and people moving into the UK, and lockdown, that's people already here in the UK. Let me explain. The domestic market is largely unaffected by the quarantine measures which have just been introduced. That's goods moving around the UK unhindered, but not people. As it stands, almost anyone coming into the UK will be required to self-isolate for 14 days. Now, there are a huge list of exemptions. The guidelines from the UK government run to 4,500 words. Let me go through the relevant bits. Freight staff coming in, primarily through the Channel Tunnel, will need to complete a new document called a Public Health Passenger Locator Form, but they won't have to self-isolate. Now, there is a huge amount of opposition from industry here in the UK, especially from tunnel operators. Now, this could, of course, all change. The British government approach to coronavirus has been, at best, dynamic. So there could be changes as we speak. However, something the government can't control is the mounting concern that there will be a mountain of containers in the UK, because maritime trade is lagging about 6 weeks behind the public coronavirus spread. And the disruption to sailings, particularly from Asian ports, means that less ships are arriving long distance in the UK, and there are less departures, and that's proving a worry for logistics operators. Now, if you already work and live here in the UK, the lockdown and social distancing issues are different. Citizens living and working in the UK are subject to lockdown, but it being the UK, it's not as simple as that. The United Kingdom, of course, is not one country, it's 4: England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. And Northern Ireland is not really relevant for RailFreight because the railway there is purely passenger. However, for our purposes, there are slight differences between the lockdown and social distancing guidelines in England, Scotland, and Wales. In brief, England is a bit more relaxed. Scotland and Wales are exhibiting a little bit more caution. So, in summary, if you live and work in the UK, there are social distancing measures, and they're slightly different between each of the home countries. If you want to come to the UK and you drive a freight train, then you will have some extra paperwork to do, but you can go about your business relatively unhindered.
Can you explain a little bit about the opposition of RailFreight operators? Because you said there is opposition and you said they can go ahead with their business quite as usual. So what is that opposition all about?
Yeah, the opposition is that the requirement to quarantine if you come to the UK, that is, put yourself into self-isolation for 14 days, is proving an extreme hindrance to business and leisure. It basically means, apart from this long list of exemptions, anyone that comes into the UK from almost anywhere in the world, with the exception of the Republic of Ireland, which has a common travel policy with the UK, they will actually have to go into an indoor isolation, that is, stay in basically a hotel room or a domicile with a client or a friend for 14 days before they can actually go about their business. That obviously isn't going to make business possible for the majority of people. And that's why industry around the UK is in great opposition to this. The fact of the matter is that people from abroad are being asked to come to the UK from countries which have generally dealt better with the coronavirus crisis than the UK, yet they're still being asked to take precautions here, which they're not being deemed necessary in their home countries.
All right, so I suppose that the last word has not been said yet about this issue. Simon, thank you very much for sharing this news from the UK.
You're welcome.
From the English channel back into the Netherlands, a lot of rail operators have addressed their concerns over the reputation of the rail connection towards Port of Rotterdam.
Harbour Line to the Port of Rotterdam has met several setbacks this year. If it was not switches that could not be operated any longer, there was sand blown onto the tracks at the Maasvlakte, causing temporary closure of railway lines. At Waalhaven South, the shunting of wagons carrying dangerous goods is no longer possible due to a non-complying water extinguishing system. This problem will not be solved until at least 2021. The rail freight industry fears that rail transportation to the world's largest port is losing ground.
The problem is that the maintenance on the tracks are relatively poor at this moment for several reasons, and that makes us very uncompetitive compared to other modalities. So what we see now, and that is a scary thing, is that our customers are considering other modalities, and that's not what we want.
The problems could have been avoided by listening carefully to the customer. The complaints of the customer and also signals were ignored the last 3 years. And another important thing is, here in the harbour we have dedicated railway infrastructure. It's relatively old, so you also need experience and expertise. If you don't have it and you don't do your inspections in the right time, then you get the problems we have now.
The fact that the railway here in the harbour is not properly maintained at this moment, customers are also considering other options. So they move to other ports, or they are moving now to other modalities.
Now, Rotterdam has led a lot of image damage by the bad state of infrastructure. So you lose confidence at shippers. We lose market share. So we got a port shift. Many containers left Rotterdam, went to Antwerp, Zeebrugge and Hamburg. And we also lost new contracts, which were transported, for example, by truck or from different terminals outside of Rotterdam.
Since September, we get a compensation for the problems we have and we are facing on the Harbour Line. However, it do not cover all the costs. As an example, the direct costs are covered, which is nice, but if for whatever reason we lost a complete round trip for a train to Italy, the rest of the costs which apply, for instance, in Germany or in Switzerland are not. And that the customer feels because he needs to find another solution. Or our sister companies will come with claims, and I cannot cover these claims at ProRail.
Yeah, ProRail has been sitting idle for too long. They should have started up taking this serious a few years earlier. Then we would have the problems. But finally, and that's lucky because last year in September they recognized that there were huge problems, so they started up a crisis management, and now they are preparing a plan to renew the whole Harbour Line, and also are talking with the safety inspections and the environmental agencies to become compliant with the requirements of the local permits.
The sector needs a boost in reliability, and that is at this moment, with this situation, impossible.
The ProRail board now recognized that there is a huge problem, and they committed themselves to a new plan. The plan will be finished this month, and then within 2 years I expect that the problems will be solved for 100%.
In the studio we have Ans Rietstra from ProRail. Ans, thank you very much for joining us. You're operational director at ProRail, and you've come to represent the infrastructure manager in the Netherlands. So we just heard in the report that there is a concern from RailFreight operators about a lack of maintenance, and they said that this is the main cause of malfunctioning railway. Is that something you share?
Yes, I really understand that. It's a big concern for us as well, because they are our customers, and we have to listen to our customers, of course. Yeah. And I think we're now focusing on another way. And so RailFreight is lagging behind, and so we want to change that.
Yeah, and can you take us back a little bit in history? What happened before and what's happening now?
We have on ProRail we are an infrastructure manager, and we have about 7,000 kilometers of rail, 400 stations, passenger rail system, and we really focused on that. Approximately 3 years ago, we didn't do so well on that passenger rail system, so we focused on that. And we didn't forget the freight rail system, but I think we didn't focus enough. So and now we really listen to our customers, and we're doing a better job now, I think.
Yeah. And what made about this change to another focus on rail freight?
It's a very important sector. It's rail freight is really important for the Dutch and the European economy. We want to have a model shift. We want more rail freight on water or on train, and it's very sustainable. So we really need more rail freight than we do have now. And then you have to have a reliable rail system. So we do have to do more things about maintenance or renewals or replacing systems, because we're really replacing the Hill, Keivoek. We're doing a lot of things on the Waalhaven. We have our golden route, so we do things otherwise.
Yeah, and if you just talk about maintenance, What exactly needs to be done in order to improve the situation?
We have, I think we have now about 100 points of malfunctions, and we have to solve those malfunctions. And we have to replace the system on Kai Fook. We have to deal with the regulations for that. We want to have a new fire system for the Waalhaven. So there are a lot of things we want to do, and we're doing this moment. And it's an example, I think, in the latest of 2019, we solved already 17 infrastructure problems, and so we can really fix it. And I think we're doing a lot better than a few years ago.
And 100 points, you said. How have these points been identified?
These points been identified. We did some investigation with trains, and then they came up with a malfunction, or we have standards on maintenance, and they didn't comply to those standards.
Yeah.
So then you have a malfunction, and you have to fix it, and we did.
Yeah, and RailFreight operators also say that they've often been surprised. So there was, for example, a point which everybody thought of, it's okay, and then there was a new regulation and a new test carried out, and suddenly there was a problem.
Yeah.
So when you said that you identified 100 malfunctioning points, do you expect other surprises to pop up, or are these the 100 ones that must be fixed?
You know the book of the Black Swan? You don't know what you don't know. So there will always be. It's a system. It's infrastructure. It's technique. It's sometimes it malfunctions. But I think now we have a real good collaboration with the transporters, with the terminal, with the port, with local agencies, with the local authorities. So I don't think we'll be surprised that much anymore. And if we are surprised, we all are surprised, and not only the freight transporters. That's a big difference, I think.
But could those surprises have been avoided in the past?
Perhaps. Some of them, of course, because we didn't focus enough. Hans Willem said it and Peter said it on video. But now I think because we really are focusing on those issues, I think it's going to be now not more as we did.
Okay. And for those 100 malfunctioning points, how long do you have, or how long do you plan?
Approximately 3 years, I think.
3 years.
Yes.
And what is needed to fix those points?
We have a dedicated team on the harbour side, on the rail side, we do have a lot of money. A lot of money. It's always not enough, of course, but we do have money to fix those things, to solve those things, and a good collaboration. So and I think if I could make a wish over here, then we would like to have more standard regulations.
Yes,
because the interpretation of regulation, it takes time and a lot of effort. So it would help us if local agencies or other companies or whatever is taking care of those regulations. And we have a program for that with the Ministry of Infrastructure, but it would help us a lot if we have the same interpretation of those regulations.
Yeah, because there was often the case that there was a new regulation, and that meant that something that complied before now suddenly didn't comply anymore. Is that something where EU and national...
oh, that would be so nice.
Yeah.
Of course, you have a local authority. A local authority is always seeing something else than maybe in Europe for Germany or England or whatever. So it would help us a lot if that's more the same, and we look at the regulations at the same manner.
Yeah, and do you have the people in your team to study those regulations?
Yes, we have. Of course, we have people in Brussels,
right.
And we trying to influence them, but it's regulated. If you have legal people, but most of the time it's black or white, and there's sometimes has to be a little bit more gray, I think. But safety first. If it isn't safe, then we're not going to have a freight rail system working, of course.
Yeah. Now, we heard in the video that RailFreight operators are concerned about the reputation of the Port of Rotterdam. Yeah. They lost business, they've lost clients, they said that some cargo has shifted to other ports and sometimes to other modalities as well. That is, of course, what nobody wants. Do you see that reputation damage too?
It's not all bad in the harbour, and it's not all bad because we are investing a lot of money together with the Port of Rotterdam, together with local authorities, with the ministry. We do the replacement of the Kallandbrug, the Theemsweg tracé. So there's a lot of money invested in the harbour and also in the rail system. So. Of course, there can always be more money, so we can invest more. But I think if we do the same with the passenger rail system and we focus on that, then also the reputation of the harbour is going to be upscaled. And we have an agreement with the transporters that we are going to have a more publicity campaign, so we can be more supportive to those transporters, but also to the freight rail system. So I think it's going to be all right in a couple of years.
And what do you mean by more supportive? Is that
if we all do, if we stick to each other, if we collaborate with each other, if we're working really together, because no one can do their own thing. We always have to do it together. And if we do it together, then there is really a supportive mode. And that's really, I think, is going to be better.
Yeah. So I just want to touch upon the Waalhaven South as well, because this is an emplacement where shunting for dangerous goods is currently not possible, and that is because of the failing fire extinguishing system. And this is not going to be resolved until 2021.
No.
What needs to be done in order to solve that problem?
We tried to solve it last year, but we couldn't fix it, temporary system. But now we're going to focus on a new system, and then we have to comply to the regulations over there, and we have to replace some tracks. We have to remove some tracks, and that's really an engineering thing. So it's going to take a little bit more time, and that little bit more time it will be next year. Then we have the final good system for Waalhaven.
Yeah. For operators, this has been quite a hassle, because they said that what they previously did in Waalhaven, now they are doing in Kijfhoek, which costs more money, costs more people. Are these people compensated in any way?
Yes, the costs are compensated, and I heard it on the video. It's never enough. I know that. It's always a discussion, but I'm not able to solve that problem, because I'm not responsible for to compensate those costs. But
who is responsible for that?
The Ministry of Infrastructure. And of course, we're trying to influence it, and we're doing it together, of course, also this problem. But I know it's all about time, just-in-time management for this industry. So if that having more handling costs, and it takes more time, then for our customers, it's a problem. But I can't solve it all.
No,
sorry.
No, that's of course also Pieter Haasjager said that he's being compensated for the problems in the Netherlands, but not for the consequences of those problems in Germany and Italy. And I suppose that's something. That the Ministry of Infrastructure has to deal with her ministers of Germany or other countries, Italy or whatever. So it's really an EU thing, I think. Yeah. So I can't deal with that. No. Well, I would like to thank you very much for explaining your point of view and for coming. Thank you. And,
From the Netherlands, let's focus back to the new Silk Road. Almost every week, there is a new connection being launched. On the 24th of May, the train from Chengdu departed to Liège in Belgium. As a matter of fact, I talked with Lei Ming from CDRS, and today we have honored to invite him in our studio. So Lei Ming, I heard that yesterday the second train has arrived at Liège already, right?
Yes, we have done 2 trains from Chengdu to Liège in May, and we plan to do 8 in June and 10 to 12 in July. The train to Liège is actually a favor to the UK embassy because the ship and airplane space to UK has become harder and harder to get. Train, on the other hand, has become relatively reliable. And from Liège to UK, there is a good connection by sea, so we can transfer these cargoes to the people in need in time by this. And by doing this, CDRS also wants to use this as a opportunity to test the market's reaction to this route. If there is a lot of demand from Chengdu to Liège, there is a good chance that CDRS will continue to do this route as a public train.
That's good to hear. It seems like the pandemic has very little influence on your operation. Maybe you can share some insight about the volume. Has it been changed?
And for the volume, we were expecting a slump in the volume, but on the contrary, it has increased. For the first quarter, there was an increase of 23%, and for April, there was an increase of 36%. And for the goods we carried, medical equipment has increased a lot since the beginning of this epidemic in both exports and imports. In the beginning of this year, it was imports. Later, it was exports. I think it's a perfect demonstration of goods interactivity between China and Europe. Our communication is efficient and effectively, so we can change the things we need. We can sell the things the other party need. And because of the restriction of working at home, depositing Europe, the working hour and capability has been less than it was. But with the help of timely feedback, we minimized the influence. The transit time has been almost the same as it was. So I think this is also an important reason why the volume increased.
Indeed, we are very glad to hear that you remain the transit time because it's very essential for our clients. What about your regular operations along the routes between Chengdu and Nuremberg, Łódź and Tilburg? What is the strategic thoughts behind this destination?
In the very beginning, the purpose was to build up a logistic channel. With the channel, we can promote trade. So the local imports and export companies can prosper from it. And to attract more export industries to Chengdu, because Chengdu was a less industrialized city compared to the coastal cities of China. By doing this, we can, eventually boost the local employment rates and tax income. So that's like our ultimate goal. And for the past years, we have been getting to know the markets better and better and adjust our policy accordingly. The need for Nuremberg routes has very few increase, or to be precise, a decrease. The Łódź and Tilburg routes are having more and more needs. A lot of small clients have been drawn to these two routes, as new trade projects have been cultivated thanks to Łódź and Tilburg. And the numbers of trains have increased a lot for the past years.
With the general trend of the subsidy being decreased from the government, will you have any new routes being established in the second half of the year?
Yes, we're planning to run a block train from Chengdu to Poznan, because both Chengdu and Poznan are inland cities in China and in Europe. So direct train connection between cities like this are very popular in the market. It's very efficient. And besides that, Poznan has a very good rail network. It has existing public trains to connect different cities in Poland, and north to the ports of Baltic Sea, west to Germany and Netherlands. This is very helpful for container distributions especially meaningful because the subsidies for China-Europe train is decreasing every year. By doing this, allows CDRS to control the costs, and in the meantime, provides more destinations to our clients.
Besides having more inland-to-inland connections to save the cost, will you establish some new products so you can generate some more profit to rely less on the subsidy?
Yes, CDRS is planning to build overseas warehouses to extend our service a little bit more. Well, even though it looks like a little bit late, or maybe it's not looks like, but we are going to do it finally. To be honest, we're still at the early phase. We're still trying to find the best location. Now we're studying the needs of the clients, the local warehouse capacities, its connection to train and its connection to truck, and the local export and import demands. Well, so far we're thinking about two locations, Tilburg in Netherlands and Łódź in Poland, because these are the routes we're already running. There are existing demands for warehouse, custom clearance, and truck service, and etc. So I think it's a good place to start. If we have any updates, we'll let you know as soon as possible.
Lei-Ming, thank you very much. We will also keep our audiences updated with the development from CDRS.
And with that, we've come to an end of the first show of RailFreight Live. We're hoping to see you all again next week, same time, 1 o'clock. And if you liked us, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Goodbye.